How's it going, everyone? Happy Thursday. I have a special guest for you today. He is the creator and host of Subway to Shea Podcast. He is a passionate Mets fan, and I just had to get him to talk about the series recap of the Subway series. His name is Mr. Anthony Rivera. Anthony, thank you for joining me.
Miguel, I feel like we just spoke, and we did just a couple of days ago, you coming on my podcast. So I'm very grateful to be on with you and on your show.
Yes, indeed, man. And man, I had a great time being part of your podcast. But let's get to Yankees and Mets. First of all, it was a playoff atmosphere. Aaron Judge, P. Alonso were missing, but boy, this series was terrific. In game one, let's talk quickly about game one. When the Mets were up, I believe 5-1. What were your thoughts at the time?
Yeah, with Scherzer on the mound and what we're supposed to be seeing from Scherzer, because I was at the stadium for that game. You pretty much think, right? Like you think that you have the game in hand with probably one of the best pitchers, in baseball, right? He's supposed to be at least. And, he came up small. It was a very unacceptable performance from him, giving those runs right back. And, when you have a 5-1 lead, and we talked about this on my podcast, it was going to be very important for Scherzer and Verlander to have a good series and to help this team win. And, Scherzer didn't have a good game. He was not very good at all. Actually, I thought he was better in his game in Atlanta, when he even kind of couldn't finish that game either. But it was really little tiny infield hits that did him in. This game, he had a lot of 0-2 counts, and he just could not finish off the batters. And he worked long counts, and it got to him. He could not finish off any of these batters, and the Yankees made him pay, and then they made him pay dearly for it.
Yeah, Mets, the first few innings, they had all the momentum, and you're thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a one lopsided game. But then DJ LeMail got things started with a 2-run home run. Anthony Volpe went 2 for 4 in this game. The Mets had their chance in the 8th inning, bases loaded, 1 out. Lindor went down, striking out, and Starling Marte as well. And that pretty much killed all their chances of coming back to win that game.
Yeah, and we talked about this, right? We talked about the players that were going to be important on this team with Pete Alonso out, with Aaron Judge out, right? We talked about it on my podcast. We said who is going to be the ones to step up. For the Mets, I talked about it having to be Lindor, right? With Pete Alonso out, he's kind of has to be that leader, and he has to come up with the big hits. And in the bottom of the 8th, with the bases loaded and 1 out, even at that point, just get a run across, right? Just get a sacrifice and bring the run in to tie the game. And he did the one thing you cannot do, and he struck out. So that was a big moment of the game, and probably what was to be the final turning point. It does not, take away the bad performance from Max Scherzer, but when you have the chance to come up big and have that big hit, he didn't do that. So that cost the Mets, and, they ended up losing the game. You even said it, DJ LeMahieu, right? He had a big game. You talked about him being the X factor. He was there. Anthony Volpe had a big game. He had been struggling coming into the Subway Series. So, good points all the way around. And we really kind of nailed it on the head on the Subway to Shea podcast when we talked about, who was going to come up big and, who wasn't. So kudos to us. How about that?
Yes, indeed, man. I felt thrilled the fact that we got that down packed. But before we go to game two, final question for game one. What do you make of Drew Smith's ejection for stickiness? He's now the second best pitcher to get ejected this season for that.
Yeah, the sticky situation that the Mets have now put themselves in, it stinks, right? Because, now they are going to be one pitcher down in the bullpen. And that's something that they desperately did not need because these starting pitchers don't go deep into games. And, even though I personally think, in my opinion, I think Drew Smith's a little overrated. I expected, and I say that because I expected him to take the next step this year. I wanted him to, get into form and be, that person that could be relied upon in big spots and be maybe instead of being a middle reliever, work his way towards being a setup man and possibly, a closer. And he has done none of those things after his terrific start last year. I think he may have broke his pinky finger when he got hit during the middle of the year. And ever since then, he was never the same. He gives up a lot of home runs, big home runs. And it stinks that, this whole thing with the sticky stuff, continues to, take place in baseball. And there's no, I mean, I don't know if we don't touch his hands or anything like that. We only go off what the umpire says. So was it too sticky? He went into the back and talked to an MLB official. They said it wasn't sticky. So now who are we supposed to believe? But at the end of the day, he did get kicked out of the game. And now it costs the Mets because he's going to be suspended for 10 days.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And clearly Max Scherzer summed it off during the post-game interview because he was in that same position. So he pretty much backed him up. But it's very tough for Drew Smith to be in that position. But let's go to game two. What a pitching performance by Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander, two former Houston Astros teammates who are still friends to this day, but now they're both competitors on this Subway Series. And this is Justin Verlander's first Subway Series, and he performed well. He had 6 strikeouts through 6 innings. Garrett Cole, 8 strikeouts through 6 innings. Both Verlander, he made some adjustments with his pitches compared to his last start. But this was a terrific. I personally enjoyed this game more than the first game, even though the Yankees won game 1. But I feel like collectively, game 2 was a much better game. It had a fantastic finish with great pitching. It was just, I was pleased with game 2.
Yeah, it was definitely the pitching matchup we all wanted to see, right? Garrett Cole, who probably could be the Cy Young this year, pitched very well against this Mets offense. Justin Verlander, who desperately needed a bounce back after his game in Atlanta, which was another unacceptable performance. It kind of mirrored what we saw the night before when Max Scherzer was on the mound and the Mets had a lead and they blew it multiple times, So this from Verlander is what we want to see, vintage Verlander. The only problem I have is, again, with the same thing that Scherzer went through, and that is that he cannot finish off the Yankee batters. He was having a hard time, getting that third stride. I think Bowers may have seen in his whole, like the appearances that he had may have been over 20 pitches from Verlander, and it shouldn't be like that, especially when this is more of a B lineup from the Yankees without Aaron Judge, who you even said is the whole offense. And when you get to have when you face the Yankees and you have Verlander with that lineup, he should have been able to, shorten his pitch count and go a little longer, although he did pitch very well. I was expecting something more in the line of kind of what Garrett Cole did to the Mets, and he kind of shot down the Mets for most of the game, only giving up a run.
I call game 2 the redemption game for the Mets. They needed to win this game. It was a must for them to win this game because they had to stop the bleeding. And when we're speaking about redemption, Starling Marte, who struck out with bases loaded in game 1, he came through to tie the game. He redeemed himself. Brandon Nimmo, he redeemed himself after what happened earlier in that game in game 2. And for him to win it for the Mets with that double, it must have felt very good for him. And he knew that in that position, he had to do something because he did not want to lose that game. And he did not want to feel like he was part of responsible for making that mistake that he made. But we saw errors in this game, obviously, especially with Alvarez throwing to second base. we saw a couple of errors, but again, the Mets found a way to redeem themselves and win this game.
Yeah, even with this win, I will say this, that I don't feel, comfortable or confident just yet that this team is getting ready to turn this around. I know we've seen it in the past, right? The Subway Series, always gets put in the middle of the year, and either the teams are doing really good, one team's good, one team's bad. Mostly it's the Mets, but it always seems to be a launching point for a turnaround or one of the teams to continue to play well. And I don't know if I feel that right now with the Mets. I don't know if you feel that way with the Yankees right now, or if we're like still, feeling the same way we did after the start of our podcast of my podcast when we came on, right? It was kind of like one of these teams could maybe take a jump off for one of these teams. And I don't feel that way. Definitely not for the Mets. I don't know how you feel, but the Yankees, and for me personally, the struggles with the errors and the base running IQ, there too much sloppy play from the Mets. You even saw it in game one. Nimmo missed a couple of catches that he should have made. He apologizes for it. He goes on post game and apologizes for it. And then what happens in game two? Another one, a base running blunder from him. And that could have been a big costly error because at that time, the bases were loaded. There was no outs, and there was one out, and they tied the game, but it would have been one out instead of two outs, and the Mets couldn't get any more runs because of it, and it could have cost them the game. I know it looked like he was safe at second base, and they it wasn't enough refutable evidence or disputable evidence to turn the call around. And I still was more on Nimmo for missing the cue from third base, and Cora, he wasn't paying attention. Cora immediately stopped Mark Vientos because Mark Vientos doesn't have speed, and he doesn't turn a third. He stops at third base, and Nimmo keeps going. So he's got to pay attention. These guys seem to lack awareness right now. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're just frustrated with the game and how the team has been playing, but they don't have the same fundies and fundamentals, as Keith Hernandez would say, that they did last season. And I don't know if that's something that Buck needs to get on them for. I mean, you even look at the play where Isaiah kind of Falefa stole home plate, and the broadcast is saying how no one was saying anything, and he just, he stole it without any issue. So I don't know. The Mets need to have some kind of meeting or what, and talk about these issues with errors and fundamentals and base running, because it's costing them games. If they get that piece locked down, we might have a different situation come a couple of weeks. But if they can't get their starting pitchers out of 5 or 6 innings, if the bullpen blows games, if the hitters don't come up big in big situations, and now you have to throw all these errors on top of it, this team is not going to make it into the playoffs. And as of right now, they're not in the playoff spot.
Yeah, things are not looking too good for the Mets. I mean, obviously the Yankees are doing a slightly better than them, but I still got to see more from them. So I'm gonna wait to see what happens after the All-Star break or even early August. But I'm not really sold with the Yankees so far. So, but like I said the other day on your podcast, is 162 games of the season. So we gotta wait to see more from these teams. But the next time they'll face off will be next month. So hopefully we could do this again. They will be in the Bronx this time. So before I let you go, for our audience, where can we follow you and your work on? So any social media handles you want to bring up, then here's your chance.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. And yeah, we'll definitely have to link up again when we get close to the Bronx series. So you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. And you can listen to my podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I thank you for, reposting, and so everyone can see in your audience where to follow the show. And I'm also on YouTube at Subway to Shea as well. But it's a little harder to, post videos and try to get all these things done when you're a one-man show. But I do try to get as much videos out as I can. Should have some things in the works soon. And then I write for risingapple.com, a part of Fansided Network. You can catch my Mets articles there.
I'll put all the information down below. So, Anthony, thank you once again. 2 collaborations in 1 week, but this was fun. So I'm looking forward to the next one. And, let's just keep doing what we love, man.
Absolutely. Triple M, I appreciate you always, my friend.